Hello my dear subscribers. I'm pleased to welcome you to my YouTube channel dedicated to author stories. Enjoy listening.
Jenna opened the office and walked up to the window. As she raised the blinds, she admired the view outside. It was a cold and sunny morning. There had been a lot of snowfall this year, with snow falling almost every day, and the snowplows were struggling to clear the roads. The parking lot in front of the office building was covered in a blanket of pure white snow that glittered brilliantly in the sun. The door to the office opened, and quick footsteps approached Jenna from behind. "Good morning, darling." Mr. Nicholas hugged her around the waist and kissed her neck. "Good morning." Jenna turned around and wrapped her arms around him. "I was just admiring the view from the window. It looks so beautiful outside, like something out of a fairy tale. Don't you think? I'm in such a good mood today for some reason. It's like there's a celebration in my heart. Well, I'll make you even happier later. But for now, let's get to work," he said, kissing her on the lips. The workday began. Mr. Nicholas was the CEO of a transportation company, and Jenna was his assistant. Her job used to be called secretary in the past. She had been working for the company for 3 years and had been in a close relationship with Mr. Nicholas for 2 of them. A year ago, he had bought her a small one-bedroom apartment. When he made the purchase, he had been thinking mostly of himself. It would be safer to date Jenna without arousing suspicion. When they went to hotels, there was always the risk of running into one of his wife's numerous friends. Or worse, his wife herself. She didn't work anywhere, they had no children, and she spent her days driving around in her Audi, shopping and visiting various salons. So catching her husband in the act wasn't such an impossible feat after all. Nicholas loved his wife, but he couldn't resist the temptation to have some fun on the side, especially since Jenna was very attractive, slender, and a 26-year-old blonde. She was also quite intelligent. Being with her was not only pleasurable physically, but also mentally, which was a rare combination. Jenna had a degree in business management from a liberal arts university but had not found a job in her field. She found a position as an assistant to the CEO on a job website. While she didn't plan on working as an assistant for her whole life, she continued to search for a job in her field by occasionally browsing job websites. From the first days, Mr. Nicholas began to take a liking to Jenna and eventually started giving her small gifts such as flowers, perfume, and beautiful boxes of chocolates. He started driving her home after work since she was renting a room from an older lady. And things just escalated from there. Jenna probably wouldn't have gotten close to Nicholas if he didn't frequently come to work looking sad. At first, he wouldn't talk about it and just waved his hand, but eventually he admitted that he had problems with his wife. She was an alcoholic and refused to seek treatment. Nicholas was tired and didn't have the strength to continue. He needed to divorce her. "It's a shame about my wife. She's a complete wreck." Jenna sympathized. "Don't you feel sorry for yourself? Life is passing by." Nicholas replied, "You're right, Jenna, I need to make a decision. But if I had someone close to me who supported me, I would decide to end things faster." Such a person appeared, Jenna. But the breakup never happened, there were only promises. And Jenna was already involved in this relationship. She got used to him and waited for Nicholas to make a decision. Several times she tried to start a conversation that if he couldn't leave his wife, then they should end their relationship. Then Mr. Nicholas would dramatically turn away and start rubbing his eyes, showing everyone how hard it would be for him to go through a breakup with her. Jenna felt sorry for him, and she waited and hoped again and again that Nicholas would finally decide to break up with his wife. She was a wonderful psychologist, and his wife was not an alcoholic at all, a beautiful, well-groomed woman. If she suspected her husband's infidelity, she tried not to think about it. Worries destroy beauty and youth, Margaret believed, and, closing her eyes to her husband's delays, was confident that Nicholas would never disappear from such a beauty like her. And she didn't want to change anything in her comfortable, affluent life. The workday ended. The last visitor left Mr. Nicholas's office, and he called Jenna over. When she entered, he stood up to greet her, hugged her waist, and pulled her close. "Jenna, my love, I bought a ski pass for the weekend. We're flying out on Friday and coming back on Monday." "But I don't ski." "It's okay. We're going to a ski resort that's perfect for beginners. And besides, there are instructors there to give lessons to newcomers. Do you have a jacket and waterproof pants?" "Yes, of course, but I don't have skis." "We don't need them. They won't let us on the plane with them anyway. There are rental shops there, and there's also an observation deck and a toboggan run." "What's that?" "A toboggan run is a controlled mountain sled. Have you ever gone down a mountain on a sled?" "Nicholas, I've never been to a ski resort." "Then you're going to love it." On Friday, they flew out. As they exited the airport, a taxi that Nicholas had ordered was already waiting for them, and in less than an hour, they were at the ski resort. The hotel room was a double, with a bus stop and 4 cable cars nearby. After leaving their backpack in the room, Jenna stepped out of the hotel and took a deep breath. The air was freezing and incredibly delicious. She loved it here. On Friday, they relaxed, walked around shops, took the cable car, and enjoyed the beauty of nature. They headed to the mountain slopes the next day. There was a lot of snow and a lot of people. Skiers and snowboarders in helmets, knee pads, and elbow pads, with or without children, in groups or couples, fun and noisy, carrying their equipment, constantly passed by Jenna. Extreme sports enthusiasts flew down the mountain slopes on their skis at high speeds, one after the other. The ski lifts moved slowly. Jenna was spellbound by the magnificence. "Well, let's go get our equipment." Nicholas touched Jenna's arm, who was enchanted by everything she saw. "And we need to find an instructor for ourselves." They rented equipment, put on helmets, gloves, and goggles, waxed their skis, and then went to the instructor's school. Their instructor was a strong guy, a professional skier who began to explain to Jenna how to walk with skis, how to fasten them when falling, which slopes to start on, how to go and how to brake, and how to make turns. He took her to the training slope and promised that she would learn to ski in 2 hours. While Jenna was learning the basics of skiing with the instructor, Nicholas, who had visited ski resorts many times before, went up to the blue slope. 2 hours of training went by quickly, and Jenna was doing great on the slopes. She was skiing down the green slope quite skillfully, and although the instructor praised her, he still did not advise her to rush to conquer the difficult slopes. After making sure that his student was already quite good on skis, he said goodbye to Jenna and wished her a great vacation. And then she saw Nicholas, who was standing, leaning on his ski poles and smiling as he watched Jenna. "Good job. I wouldn't have thought it was your first time on skis. Maybe you'll take a risk and go down the blue slope?" Nicholas said. The instructor said not to rush, Jenna replied, pleased with his compliment. "Yeah, who knows what he's talking about, he's just being cautious. Let's go, you'll see that it's not as dangerous as he thinks," he urged her. They took the lift up to the top of the blue trail. "So, are we going?" Nicholas asked cheerfully. But Jenna became scared. "No, I'm afraid. You can go down, but I won't take the risk," she said. Nicholas pushed off with his poles and flew down the mountain. He skillfully maneuvered through the slopes, gaining speed and then deftly braking. In the evening, they sat in a cozy cafe and drank red wine. Jenna was still thrilled with the sensation of flying and the view of the mountains. She enjoyed the speed, even though it was not that high. Nicholas enthusiastically talked about his love for skiing, but Jenna smiled and waited for him to say something else. But he didn't. "Nicholas, how is your wife?" she blurted out. "Jenna, I was in such a good mood, and you just destroyed it with one question. We came here to relax. I'm tired of seeing my wife always drunk. I just wanted to have some fun." "Let's not talk about this now," he replied. Jenna lowered her head. As always, it was neither the time nor the place. The next day they started with sledding. It was unforgettable. The speed was high, up to 40 kilometers per hour. The wind whistled in their ears, tears streamed down their faces, the sled shook, and on the turns, it tilted. But it was impossible to fall out, they were securely fastened with belts. On the way down, Jenna screamed, either from fear or from pleasure. But the descent, although it was over a kilometer, ended quite quickly. They flew for about 3 minutes. And then they were already being lifted up by the rope. Jenna and Nicholas had an adrenaline rush. They continued their day on skis. "Maybe today you'll overcome your fear and go down the blue slope?" Nicholas slyly squinted. After the Redellbahn, Jenna felt like she could handle anything. "Why not? I'll go down," she replied. They stood together on the slope, and Nicholas commanded, "Go," and he was the first to start down the slope. Jenna pushed off and, a bit afraid, kept stopping frequently as she descended slowly. Nicholas was already far below when he saw a skier coming down from the top at an alarming speed and not slowing down. The skier was heading straight for Jenna. Nicholas began waving his arms and shouting, but Jenna thought he was greeting her and waved back. Suddenly, something hit her with great force, and she fell, tumbling over several times and losing consciousness. Jenna woke up in unbearable pain, with people bustling around her, paramedics giving her shots, then putting her on a stretcher and into an ambulance. She saw Nicholas looking bewildered and holding her hand. And then blackness engulfed her once again. Bright white snow blinded her, seeping through her sunglasses. Nicholas was standing next to her, smiling and gently holding her hand. She turned to him, groaning in pain, and opened her eyes. Her mother was sitting next to her, holding her hand. "Sweetie, should I call the doctor? Does it hurt?" Her mother wiped away the tears. Jenna struggled to unstick her dry lips and whispered, "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I flew right away as soon as your boss called me. He told me that your team went skiing and something happened to you. They didn't let me see you for 2 days. You were in the ICU after surgery. But today they moved you to a room, and I was finally allowed in." "Where is Nicholas?" Jenna whispered again. "What Nicholas?" "Your boss?" "Well, he organized your medical flight, paid for the doctors, picked me up at the airport, and handed over the keys to your rental apartment. I haven't seen him since. He also paid for this room," she added. But Jenna wasn't listening to her mother anymore and turned away towards the wall. Emotional pain joined her physical pain. He paid for everything, or rather paid off. What did you think, that he would be a caregiver by your side? Although Mr. Nicholas was very unhappy with the situation, he felt that he had done everything he could by paying a lot of money for transportation and medical care. He continued to live his normal life, trying to forget the terrible tragedy. Jenna's mother took leave from work and stayed to care for her. They put a cot in the room for her, but she hardly used it. Mr. Dillon, who was her doctor, came into the room. Jenna lay with her eyes closed, and her mother sat quietly next to her. Seeing the doctor, Mrs. Sheila whispered, "She fell asleep. She moaned all night, but fell asleep after the injection. Let her sleep. But when she wakes up, call me." He looked at Jenna again, and something in his heart trembled. Mr. Dillon closed the door and leaned against the wall. Such coincidences don't happen, it's some kind of mysticism. 3 years ago, he married a wonderful girl. Marina had just graduated from university and was working at the local newspaper. When she was assigned to write an article about doctors, she came to the city hospital, and the chief physician advised her to talk to Dillon. He's young, but a competent specialist. So they met, and a few months later, got married. Marina quickly became pregnant, and, although doctors advised against it because she had a weak heart, she insisted on keeping the baby. Throughout the pregnancy, Dillon carefully protected his wife from any harm or stress, but during childbirth, her heart couldn't take it, and she couldn't be saved. Their tiny daughter was left behind, born completely healthy. He named her Marina in honor of his wife. Many people warned him against naming her after the deceased, saying it was a bad omen. But Dillon didn't want to listen to anyone. Now, the daughter was almost 2 years old, and she looked just like her mother. When the medical airplane brought Jenna to the emergency room, and he approached the stretcher on which the unconscious girl with multiple bruises on her face was lying, his heart skipped a beat. Marina. Of course, it was another girl who bore an incredible resemblance to his late wife. Over time, the bruises faded, and the resemblance became even more noticeable. Mr. Dillon, Jenna woke up. Mrs. Shayla's face appeared in the door of the doctor's room. Yes, good, I'm coming. He put the x-ray aside and stood up, intending to leave. But before he did, he looked at the photo of Marina on his desk. And once again, the thought pricked at him, they were the same person. In the hospital room, he sat down on the edge of the bed. Good afternoon, Jenna. How are you feeling today? My back hurts a lot, the girl answered quietly. Dillon pulled back the covers and started feeling her legs. Do you feel anything? No. He started poking her legs. How about now? I feel some touches. Good, that means you haven't completely lost your sensitivity. Doctor, Mrs. Shayla interjected, will she be able to walk? I can't make any predictions right now. Jenna has a spinal cord injury. She has lost the ability to move for now, although some slight sensitivity remains. Today's treatment and rehabilitation programs allow many people to get back on their feet. But this will definitely not happen soon. It may take 6 months or a year for a person to return to a normal life. For now, there are physical therapy, massage, breathing exercises, and muscle strengthening exercises. And the most important thing is to fight depression. Is the psychologist coming? Yes, he is coming. Dillon was stalling for time. He didn't want to leave this girl who looked so much like his Marina. His colleagues were already asking him why he was spending so much time with her. He was drawn to this girl with an inexplicable force. He missed his Marina so much that being near Jenna made it seem like Marina was the one suffering from pain, and he needed to be there to support her. Leaving the room, Dillon was constantly tormented by the question, could such a similarity exist between strangers? He knew that his wife was an only child, and she didn't even have any cousins. These thoughts so firmly settled in his head that Dillon couldn't think of anything else but the inexplicable resemblance of the girls. He was exhausted from these thoughts and decided to visit Marina's parents. They hadn't seen each other much lately, even though they lived in the same city. Marina's mother had fallen seriously ill after her daughter's death, and when she saw her little granddaughter, a copy of her daughter, she would have a fit. So Dillon tried not to remind them of himself and his granddaughter too often. But now he wanted clarity. Mrs. Viola opened the door. They hadn't seen each other in a month, and she even looked a little fresher. Hello, Dillon, she said cheerfully. Come in, come in. I'm so glad you're here. How is Marina doing? Dylan wasn't very surprised. After all, time heals. Thank you, Mrs. Viola. Marina is doing well. Her nanny is working with her and she already knows a few letters and can count up to 3. But I didn't come just to visit you, although I did want to see you. I have a question for you. Did Marina definitely not have any sisters? Mrs. Viola turned towards the window and remained silent while Dylan waited. Finally, she spoke softly, as if carefully choosing her words. We took Marina from a foster home. She was very sick, with heart problems. She had 1 operation, and more were needed, but there was a great risk that she wouldn't survive, so we were afraid to proceed. The doctor said she could live her whole life with this illness, or it could end suddenly at any moment. We were hopeful for the best. Yes, she does have a sister somewhere. They were fraternal twins. But Marina was born sick, and they refused her at the hospital. If she were alive, I would never have revealed this secret. But why does this interest you? You see, we have a girl in neurosurgery with a spinal injury who is an exact copy of Marina. Their resemblance is unsettling to me, so I decided to ask you about it. It's very possible that she is Marina's sister, Mrs. Viola said thoughtfully. But let's change the subject. It's painful for me to talk about this. She got up, laid the table, brought out teacups and candies, and the conversation shifted to a different topic. She began to ask about little Marina, and Dylan understood that Viola's heart was healing from the pain of loss. Mrs. Viola, please come visit us. Marina would be happy to see you. Absolutely, Viola promised. Now, much became clear. It was just hard to believe that Mrs. Sheila, such a pleasant and caring woman who selflessly tended to her immobile daughter, could have once refused a tiny sick child. It didn't make sense in Dylan's mind, and it seemed like 2 completely different women. In the morning, he visited Jenna first thing. She was lying with her eyes closed. Sheila was sitting on the couch with a book. Is she asleep? He nodded towards Jenna. Good morning, doctor. She fell asleep recently, Sheila replied. Can you come to my office? Of course, Sheila put the book aside and stood up. There was no one in the office except for Dylan. Have a seat. He gestured to a chair and turned the photo on his desk so that Sheila could see it. Tell me, Mrs. Sheila, do you know this girl? Of course, she's my daughter. But where did you get her photo? That's not your daughter. Well, she could have been your daughter. In any case, that's not Jenna. Sheila shuddered. Maybe. Will you tell me about your secret? Tell me, who is this girl to you? Her lips trembled. This girl was my wife. She died giving birth almost 2 years ago. Her name was Marina. Now it's your turn to tell the truth. Yes, I'll tell you. There's been a weight on my heart for years, and my conscience and desire to know about the fate of my child have been tormenting me. And now I've found out, but... Sheila's hands trembled with emotion. She covered her face and burst into tears. Dylan waited patiently. People kept popping in and out of the office, but when they saw a weeping woman, they closed the door immediately. Through her tears, she began her story. My husband and I were really looking forward to having children, and we knew we were having twins. But no doctor saw any abnormalities. When they were born, they told me right away that one of the girls had serious heart problems. And no one gave any guarantees that she would survive. And when my husband found out about the baby's illness, he firmly stated that we wouldn't be taking the sick daughter. I cried, but my tears didn't change my husband's decision. It was either him or this girl. I had nowhere to go. I'm from an orphanage. Yes, I chickened out then, I admit it. We left the baby in the orphanage, and I didn't want to find out about her fate. I was scared to hear that she was no longer alive. But believe me, I didn't know a single minute of peace. And when my husband wasn't home, I just cried. I know that it doesn't justify me at all. This sin and this pain will stay with me forever. There is no forgiveness for me. Yes, I will never forgive myself. And now I have learned what I always feared. Marina is no longer with us." She continued to cry, burying her face in her hands. Dylan listened, looking away. Of course, there's no forgiveness for a mother who rejects a child, especially a sick one. But seeing her genuine grief, he felt a little sorry for Sheila. After all, the universe had cruelly punished her for her betrayal. Yes, Marina is gone, but her daughter is still here, also named Marina. "She's almost 2 years old," Dylan said quietly. "Could you show me my granddaughter?" Lena asked, lifting her head and sobbing. "Granddaughter? I'll think about it. Go to the ward, the physiotherapist will come soon." Jenna spent a month in the ward, suffering from pain, but it wasn't as unbearable as before. She got used to the idea that she wouldn't be able to walk and kept her nerves in check, bravely enduring her terrible condition and not allowing herself to give in to weakness. She even thought about what she could do to occupy herself. She stumbled upon a tutorial on dry felting online. The artist made a small teddy bear figure in just a few minutes, and Jenna really liked this type of creativity. It was time to check out. Now all hope was on rehabilitation. Mrs. Sheila needed to go home and return to work. Her vacation was over. On this morning, Dylan was standing in the hospital room by the window, watching as the ambulance pulled up and they wheeled Jenna out on a gurney and loaded her into the vehicle. He rushed out onto the street and said goodbye to her, promising to visit her, possibly even in the evening. When Jenna arrived back at her apartment, it was neglected and unkempt. Flowers on the windowsill had withered, and dust covered the furniture. The medical staff laid Jenna down on her bed, said their goodbyes, and closed the door. And then Jenna, who had been holding her emotions in check, finally broke down and cried loudly. The apartment brought back memories of everything that had happened in the past month, meeting Nicholas, going on a trip to the mountains, skiing, and the fact that he had not visited her in the hospital once since the accident. There were no declarations of love, promises to break up with his alcoholic wife, or to marry her. There was nothing. And now she was disabled, unable to walk, and possibly bedridden for the rest of her life. What was waiting for her? Was it worth living anymore? Maybe it was better to end it all at once, without tormenting herself or others. She just wished her mother would leave quickly, and then she would make up her mind. Sobs shook her body, and Sheila stroked her head, trying to calm her down. But her attempts were in vain. Jenna didn't hear anything. Unable to calm her daughter down, Sheila wiped away her tears and went to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Gradually, the sound of sobbing became quieter, and Jenna calmed down. When Sheila walked back into the room, Jenna was lying there with red, swollen eyes, but she was no longer crying. In the evening, there was a knock on the door. Jenna was stirred, secretly hoping it was Nicholas. But it was Dylan, and he wasn't alone. He was with a little blonde girl, and 2 men were hauling in some bulky object. Dylan walked into the room holding his daughter and said to the movers, "Guys, let's move the girl onto the cot and put the mattress in place." He put the girl on the floor, helped the men, and when the antidecubitus mattress was laid down, they returned Jenna to the bed and the movers left. He led Marina to Sheila and said, "This is Marina. You wanted to see her, didn't you?" Sheila's lips trembled. The little girl was a copy of her little Jenna. She took the girl in her arms and hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jenna, not understanding anything, looked at the scene in surprise. Her mother looked back at her and said, "I'll explain everything to you later. For now, I'll just say that you had a sister. She died, and this is her daughter, Marina. Please don't ask any questions right now, and she turned back to the little girl, who was not afraid of the strange woman at all and calmly looked at her, only not understanding why she was crying. While Sheila was talking to Marina, Dylan approached Jenna and said, "Are you comfortable on the mattress, Jenna? Just don't give up the exercises that you need. Do them for a few hours every day. A lot depends on you whether you can get up or not." He gave her a lot of other advice, but he refused the tea that Sheila offered. Dylan felt a dislike for her in his heart, but there was nothing he could do about it for now. Mrs. Sheila had to leave. She had already bought her tickets, but she didn't leave her daughter without help. She found a good caregiver and left her phone number just in case. She called mostly by herself later on. Dylan, on the other hand, was drawn to Jenna, and he began to visit her small apartment very often, sometimes with advice, sometimes with help, but mostly just to see her. He brought her a corset, showed her how to put it on, and she began to sit up slowly. Later, the movers brought in a wheelchair and Jenna was able to move around the room. Of course, she couldn't sit in the chair by herself. Either the caregiver or Dylan would help her if he was at her apartment. He came sometimes after his day shift or on weekends. A few times he brought Marina, whom Jenna made laugh by making a funny clumsy rabbit. "I know you're my mommy," the little girl said, hugging the rabbit to her chest. How to explain to the child that her mommy and Jenna were one and the same? She felt awkward from Dylan's increased attention, but he just brushed it off, saying, "We're relatives." But in reality, he didn't feel any familial bond. He loved Marina and now he loved Jenna. They were very similar not only in appearance, but also in their outgoing, intelligent, and educated personalities. He enjoyed talking to his wife about different topics, and it was the same with Jenna. Dylan couldn't even understand if he loved Jenna as his wife or just Jenna herself. And she was afraid to admit to herself that Dylan had become very dear to her, and she eagerly awaited his visits, fearing that he would tire of dealing with a disabled person and stop coming. No one came to visit her except Dylan. When she returned from the hospital, a colleague named Tatiana visited her a few times with the latest news. Mr. Nicholas hired a new assistant, and it seemed they had started a romance. But this news didn't upset Jenna. She understood that Nicholas never intended to divorce, let alone marry her. Yes, and the strong physical pain dulled the emotional pain. And in her heart, a feeling for a completely different man was slowly taking root. Her friend visited the university a couple of times more, but the visits quickly stopped and Jenna didn't judge anyone. Once Dylan came with good news. "Jenna, you're accepted into a rehabilitation center. I arranged it. You'll have all the possibilities for recovery there. They do acupuncture, manual therapy, and magnetic therapy. Yes, there's much more they can offer. The center helped many people before. So get ready in a week." "But that's expensive," Jenna said, not very cheerfully. "No, they made an exception for me as a doctor. The rehabilitation will take a few months. Are you okay with that?" "I'm okay with it," Jenna said, still not very happy. She thought, he's tired of dealing with me, so he's sending me away. She didn't know that Dylan invested all of his savings into this center, took out a loan just to send Jenna to rehabilitation. 6 months passed. In the vestibule of the rehab center, a group of people waited: Jenna's parents, Dylan, and Marina. Finally, Jenna appeared in the doorway. She walked out with the help of crutches and a nurse. Her legs were tightly fixed in orthoses, and she walked slowly and carefully, but her face beamed with a happy smile. "She's walking." Dylan was the first to rush to her. "I knew you would walk again. I'm so happy for you." And unexpectedly for himself, he kissed her on the lips. Jenna blushed. "I'm so glad you and Marina came." Just don't leave me, okay? Never, Dylan replied.